Hey, welcome. I hope you're all doing fine, staying safe, staying home, and most importantly, you're creating something that inspires people around us. Today's presentation is all about perplexing perspective. Perspective, which is quite obvious to everyone, yet puzzling. It is often confused as distortion. Today's presentation by the Ashok Kandimalla brings out how perspective affects your images and how to exploit its properties. Before we jump into the session, let's have some quick announcements. And with that, I'm Hardik Shah, one of the directors of YPS and host for today's session. Starting with Drishti, I hope you all have read the October edition, and the time for now is to send us some reviews. And you can send us review. It's as simple as you need to pick up your phone, type in this WhatsApp number, which is 9513 YPS BLR, which is 9513-977-257. And let's see if you can right now pick up your phone and send us some reviews if you have read this October edition or any other edition, so that we can bring up right now on the screen. Let's see, probably 5 minutes. Let's see who drops in a quick review. That will really help us. The next announcement is regarding the International Salon. I hope you have started sorting your best work to submit and win some amazing awards and prizes. And if you wish to become a member, if you are sitting in front of a laptop or a TV screen, all you need to do is scan the code. If not, just visit our website, ypsbengaluru.com. And I hope you all have liked our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube pages, and subscribed to our channel on the YouTube. And as you all know, this session is also being streamed on YouTube. If you're on Facebook, I would request you to go to the YouTube for a better experience. Also, don't forget to hit the like button and share it with your friends right away. Some interesting and happy news came today. I hope you all have read the viewfinder, FIP viewfinder. We would like to thank our members for contributing to the success and accolades for YPS. Coming to the next week's YPS Meet Live session, the session is from Mr. Raj Simha, who is our member and the person behind one of the best designs for our catalogs, national and international salons, is Mr. Raj Simha, and he'll be presenting and he'll be sharing his experience on Kulisai. Coming to today's session, perplexing perspective. Now let's see, try, telling this term 5 times continuously. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be confusing, but don't worry. By the end of session, all the confusion will go away. But still, pronouncing this perplexing perspective, I don't know if it's going to go away. Yeah. So let me welcome our today's presenter, Mr. Ashok Kandimalla from Chennai. Good evening, sir. How are you doing?
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening to all YPS members and others. And I'm absolutely delighted to see Satish there. I call Satish as the bird whisperer because he can talk to birds. That's the reason.
Yeah.
And it is really gratifying to see him over here. And I consider it to be a great honor to be presenting anything to YPS, and especially today, being the Kannada Rajyotsava Day. Yeah. I think it's I don't know whether it was coincidental or otherwise, but it is a wonderful thing to be with you on the Rajyotsava Day. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So, warm welcome to YPS. It's really, we are happy to have you here. Definitely, if this would be a physical session, it would be much more amazing. I guess it's been quite some years, 3 or 4 years. I met you. Probably last time we met was during one of the launch by Profoto A1. If I'm not wrong with.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, fine. Again, a warm welcome to YPS, and let me quickly introduce to our audience Mr. Ashok Kandimalla. He has been in the field of photography for more than 3 decades and has extensive experience in both film and digital. As an electronics and computer engineer, he has a unique and deep insight into digital photography technology. Ashok has a passion for sharing his knowledge through teaching and writing. Starting from 2009, Ashok has been authoring a series of articles under the title Basics of Photography in the magazine Smart Photography till date. Many of his articles have been published in Viewfinder, which is official journal of FIP. He was also a co-editor for the FIP Sapphire Jubilee Viewfinder book. So far, he has published more than 200 articles plus equipment reviews in various leading Indian photography magazines. Ashok has also conducted more than 100 workshops and photography courses for several corporate customers like Honeywell, Bank of America, Infosys, and UNESCO. Currently, he conducts workshops and classes regularly at Mindscreen Film Institute, that is MFI, Chennai. He was the president of Telangana Photographic Society in 2018. He was also invited as a speaker at the FIP convention in Rajahmundry. Ashok has been interviewed and featured on the Nikon Japan Sanitary website for his contribution to photography. He is the only Indian to be thus honored. So this is about Ashok sir, and I have heard this, and which is very true. He is known as the walking encyclopedia of photography, and you will know that in a while. So what I have my experience with Ashok sir is that any complex situation or a topic, he just makes it so simple and just makes it in front of you that it's so easy to understand, and I feel that's his ultimate power. So begin to coming to our today's session on perplexing perspective. Over to you, Ashok sir.
Thank you, Dick. Thank you for the very generous introduction, I would say. I'm not sure whether I deserve all that praise or not, but let me start on this presentation with the name Perplexing Perspective. And
yeah.
I do hope by the end of the session, the first word will be removed in your minds and it will be just perspective. That's my hope.
Yeah, right, perspective. Right.
Yeah. And this is a very interesting topic, and it has been done by me many times because many people have some wrong ideas about the perspective. It is very simple, but at the same time, I won't call it difficult, but it's a bit tricky, nothing more than that. All tricky things are hard to understand if you don't know the trick. Once the trick is known, you'll turn back and say, oh, after all, is this what it is? And I do hope you will say the same thing towards the end of today's session. So let's start off with the title. And let me start with my very standard first slide. That he who asks a question is a fool for 5 minutes, and one who doesn't is for the rest of his life. So
very true.
That's a very famous proverb. So it is very simple. Please feel free to ask any questions regardless of the proverb, because questions make a session interesting. And the last point also further emphasize it that this is what one of my professors told me, and it has been etched in my mind, that only questions that are not asked are the stupid questions. Any question that asked is a good question, because you may be asking the question, but the same doubt may be in the other person's minds also, and they will also get benefited with your question. Okay.
Yeah.
So you can type in the questions, and we'll also pause once in a while, maybe towards the middle. And Hardik said he will be moderating the questions. So I think we're all set with that. Okay.
Yeah. Just a small announcement I'll do quickly. I hope you are watching this on a large screen on a laptop or a desktop. And if you're watching this on Facebook, and if you're seeing some the subtitles at the bottom, those are auto-generated by Facebook. I would request to click on the button called CC and turn the subtitles off. And if you have any questions, as Ashok sir mentioned, you can put them in the comment section, and we will bring that up on the screen and we'll address to that. Yeah, yes, sir. Let's start.
Okay. So these are the various topics I'm going to talk to you about. Generally, they are known by the popular name contents, but this is what I'm going to tell you. So first of all, we look at what is perspective, first of all, and what is distortion, and why these two are often mistaken and confused with one another. And we also look at how perspective and focal length interact or they don't interact. Let's look at that a little later. And where it is used practically in photography, in landscape and portraits, where it plays a very important role. And then, of course, some errors that occur due to perspective, how do we correct them? And some common questions that arise when you, after you go through this presentation, you'll find some questions coming into your mind, and we'll try to answer those. And of course, finally, some conclusions. Okay, now each of my slides has a slide number at the bottom left, where that arrow points out. And if you want to ask me a question of a particular slide, I request you to note down that number, so it will be easy for me to navigate to that particular slide and then answer your question more pertinently. Okay, so with that, let's start. So what's perspective, first of all? Okay, the world we see is in 3 dimensions. That means what? It has some height, it has width, but it also has depth. That is, there are some things closer to you and some things away from you. Okay. Whereas when you look at that photograph on a screen or on a print or on a TV or even on a movie theater, it is only 2 dimensions. You see height, you see width. There's no depth. That is, you can't push your hand through your screen, right? It's flat. There is no 3rd dimension. So there is some process going on where this 3-dimensional things which we see with our eye are getting converted into a flat thing on a screen, etc. And that process is known by the name projection, or it's a representation, where in our case, the 3D scene is getting converted into a 2D, a flat image. Okay. So what happens from 3D to 2D is a projection. And there are several ways of doing it, actually, just not one. If I'm sure there are some engineers sitting in this audience, and you must have heard of what is called an isometric projection. And if some of you are active into panorama photography, you would have also seen the words like cylindrical projection, spherical projection. And of course, if you're using a fisheye lens, that's a type of projection too. Okay, but the one which is most natural to your eye is the perspective one. And that's what happens when you take a photograph. In fact, it is as simple as this. Every photograph you take, every photograph, without exception, unless you're using something like a fisheye lens, is a perspective projection of the screen, where whatever you're seeing in front of your eyes, which is in 3D, is being caught on the sensor or a film or whatever, on a flat thing, which is 2D. And when you see it, that same thing continues in fact. Okay. So in fact, the next sentence says it all, that you really cannot take a photograph that does not use a perspective projection. It's very inherent in the process itself. Okay, or of course you can change it in post-processing through like Lightroom or Photoshop, where you can change the projection to cylindrical or spherical, etc., etc. But when you capture it in its purest form, it is always a perspective projection. Okay. So it is so simple. If you're taking every photograph you take is a perspective projection, why is it confusing? That's a very funny part of it. And let's look at what it means. Before we go further, let us look at the very definition of what is perspective. Perspective is basically a Latin word, okay, which literally when translated says to see through. Okay. So what is seeing through? Imagine yourself going to a tall building, okay, and you go to one of the windows in the building. It's a glass window, let us say, and you look through that window, what is outside? So what do you see? You see a few things like trees and buildings and some other things, and these are one behind the other, right? And suppose you take a glass pencil or a pen and you draw what you see on top of that glass, you are creating a perspective projection of the scene you are seeing. And that's what actually your camera also captures. So what is the most important characteristic of this? The first point is smaller the size of the objects as the distance from the observer increases. That's very, very common. You definitely know this. Maybe you have not been put through a very formal definition like that, but you all know that things close to you look large and things far away from you look smaller. I don't think there is an iota of doubt also as far as that is concerned. There is also another type of projection, or rather perspective point, which is also very interesting, and that is called foreshortening. So what is foreshortening? Look at your camera once. I'm showing it like this. This is a scale. Can you tell me what is the length of the scale? You can't. You can't tell what is the length of the scale because the object dimension is along the lens. Okay. Only when I turn it like this, you will be able to tell me the size of the scale. Like this, you cannot tell. Okay. So when you are along the axis, you cannot tell. When you turn it, you will be able to tell. Okay. So this is something interesting, and you may think, what is the significance of this? Actually, it is very, very important in portrait photography. We'll just see in a little while from now why it's important for photography. But perspective foreshortening, when the object is along the lens, axis of the lens, you will not be able to realize the true dimension of that particular object. Just like I show you. Only when you turn it around, you will be able to understand the true size of it. Okay. So this is a very important property that we can exploit in certain situations to make things look better in our photographs. Okay. Finally,
just to make it for me to understand. For example, if I'm seeing any object in front of me with my naked eyes, if I compare that with a image taken from a camera, so both the things are same. What I'm seeing is also same. What is being captured in the camera is also same. Just because
there is a lens. Same, because you are seeing with your two eyes, so you have a perception of depth. Camera,
where I'm going is like the camera has got a lens in between, and because of which it is different from what we are seeing. There is some change in the scene. Things are a little far, or they are near. So that change is nothing but perspective, right?
Well, assuming that you are using a camera with a lens which has the same field of your eye, it's not a wide angle or a telephoto. What you say is correct, but rarely that happens in.
Okay. Yeah. So you add something, and if it changes, then what you normally see.
Yeah, it changes, but it's not so simple either. That's one of the things we are going to discuss in.
Okay. Cool.
But main thing is you have two eyes. Camera has only one lens. So the stereoscopic vision is not there in the camera unless you're using a stereo camera. That's a different story. In which case you are actually photographing with two lenses simultaneously. You must have gone to some stereo movies where you put on a pair of glasses and all. So that's not what we are looking at this stage today. Okay. So next point is that perspective is not distortion. Okay. Many people mistake one to the other. Okay. So it's not a lens defect. Distortion is caused when a lens is defective, whereas perspective is not. Even your eye has a perspective issue. We'll see that also. So do not mistake one for the other, and we'll see some examples, and you'll get a better idea of that. Okay. So if I'm telling you that every photograph you're taking is a perspective projection, then how does it look without a proper perspective?
Exactly.
Okay, that's a very interesting point. So let's look at it. In fact, this godforsaken perspective issue was not understood very well in the beginning, when not during the days of photography, but before that. So people used to paint just as they wish. Okay, let's look at these two paintings, which were done before people started understanding what this perspective is. Now look at this picture on the left side first. Does it make sense to you? It doesn't make to me. There's a horse which is smaller than a man who's at the back. Okay, you find that each fellow is standing on the other fellow's head. Okay, all in all, it is very funny. The guys in the front are small, the guys at the back are big. Okay, that's counterintuitive to you. These were such paintings made when people did not understand the concept of perspective. And also it was prominent that there's a king or a religious leader or somebody like that. They used to make that guy look very big compared to the other guys to give him some sort of a prominence. Even our great Mughal paintings, which are perhaps unparalleled for their fine line drawing, did not understand this very correctly till some time. If you look at this other one, which is a Mughal miniature, you can look at each fellow is standing on top of the other fellow's head, and everyone is of the same size approximately.
Yeah.
So this went on for a while, and sometime during 1400 and 1300, I don't know, there was a guy, an Italian guy. His name is Filippo Brunelleschi, or whatever the godforsaken name is. We'll call him Filippo for our easy to make him to pronounce it easily. So he worked out the underlying principle and the mathematics behind how a perspective projection works. Okay. He was an architect also. During those days, many people were artists and architects. Another great example was Michelangelo, who was an artist and an architect. Like this man also was an architect and an artist. And he thought that something is basically wrong the way people are showing things. And he worked out in principle how things that far away should be made to look smaller and not as you wish and as you please, but according to a particular formula. So he worked that out and he made this drawing where he drew parallel lines, but shown them converging at the back. Okay, that's because of the perspective. And here also you find some people at the back and some people at the front, but they are no longer the same size. The people who are at the back are of a different size and compared to the people in the foreground. And immediately, to our eyes today, we'll immediately say, oh, those guys who are playing at the back or the people at the back are also people, not some pygmies or lilliputs, but that just happen to be far away. That's all.
Far away.
Okay, that was not understood till this man very clearly. He had a profound influence on many artists who came after that, and everybody started making pictures look more natural to the eye than with using this concept of perspective, which was not very well understood before him. Okay, so that's how it started. Okay, so why is it important for us in photography, this perspective issue? Okay, as you know, we've been repeatedly saying that photography images are captured as displayed as flat, no third dimension at all. Okay, so lack of third dimensionality means, strictly speaking, you cannot tell which is in the front and which is at the back. You are able to say that very easily because you have two eyes. Okay, whereas in a photograph you can't say that. So you have to create a perception of depth somehow by other means. So how does you do that? Okay, when a person sees a photograph, whether consciously or unconsciously, he knows that smaller things are away and larger things are closer. But there is another small thing going on behind your brains. That's your brain. Okay, what it tells you is that though you may not realize, it has some information regarding big things and small things already stored in your brain.
Okay.
So when it sees a small thing looking big, like a stone looking bigger than a mountain, what does it tell you? It tells you that the stone is very close to you and the mountain is very far away from you.
Yeah.
Okay. So it is the brain that is helping you to somewhat understand which is in the front, which is at the back. Though your eyes alone will not be able to tell. Your eyes will tell the size, but really the input from the brain is what it really determines which is front, which is back. Okay, let's take one simple example. Look at this picture. There are a couple of questions written over there. Are you looking at a giant? There's a hill and a guy, or is it simply the person is close to you? Perhaps you'll all think what a silly question this is, and why did they call this madman from Madras to ask us this question? Don't we all know that he is a person after all? And he's standing close to us. That's why he's looking bigger than the hillock. But friends, it's not so simple. That is the information stored in your brain that hills are bigger, persons are smaller than hills. And if a person is really looking bigger than a hill, he is close to you, is what you are concluding. Okay. If that size relationship is somehow disturbed by some means, then you will get a completely different idea. Let's look at that. Here is one small example.
This is perplexing.
Are you able to see this? No.
Yeah, it says assumptions. It says, do you see this short clip?
Yeah, I am going to show. Now you are able to see it, right?
Yeah, it started playing.
Okay.
It is paused now.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I paused it. So friends, look at this scene, what it is. Very simple scene. There's a table and a chair with a couple of cups and saucers on them. Very common. You would see this scene in your at home also, not a problem all the time. Okay. And there is a painting put on the wall. And please watch this thing very carefully. It's only a few seconds. I won't bore you with minutes and minutes. Please watch this. Sorry. So what do you say now?
Yeah.
So here, what this guy has done is purposely altered the sizes of the naturally looking objects, and your your eye thought the chair and the table are corresponding to the same size, same scale. Likewise, all the cups and saucers are the same size. So your brain was sort of misleading you into that. Okay, but fortunately for us, these things don't happen. You can easily identify which is small, which is big, and which are the naturally occurring objects. So when you compare one another, you'll immediately able to say what is in the front and what is at the back. So that's the property we are going to exploit in our photography. Okay, it is not what your camera is capturing alone, but it is also what is the stored in your brain that is aiding to create that sense of depth. And that property we are going to use to create that sense of depth. Okay?
Yep.
So what does this thing do? What is this? So many people call this distortion. Right? especially when you take selfies with your cell cameras, which are held arm's length or even closer, and then you find that your face bulges up, right? Your face becomes sort of wider, nose becomes bigger, cheeks become bigger. And look at this building. It's falling somewhere behind. Okay. Now, also look at one more picture. Many people call this distortion. It's quite common. They say, no, don't go near those buildings at the bottom and keep your camera up, you'll get distortion.
Yeah.
What about this? Interestingly, nobody calls this distortion. Okay.
Yeah, though
But
it is
it's the
converging
same.
like
It is
the tall
exactly
buildings.
same as this is exactly same as that building. Okay.
Yeah.
So what does that say? Very simple. What is happening here? You are at the base of the building, so things closer to you are looking bigger, and the roof of the building is far away. So that becomes smaller. That's how naturally it appears. Okay. And then you combine both the sides. The lines look to be merging at the top. And the same thing is appearing in the case of your
railway
track. No different. Okay. These rippers which are close to you are big. And as the distance increases, the rippers become smaller and smaller. And you all know and 100% agree that railway tracks are all parallel, right? Otherwise, trains will collapse or fall. So,
correct.
But you are quite comfortable with this, all of you, all the photographers, but they are not very comfortable with a face like that. But what I am trying to tell you is, both are caused exactly by the same thing. Both are caused exactly by your what you call as a perspective. See, all three things as the same effect is coming into play. All three things are showing you how the perspective operates. Very simple. Things close to you are bigger. Things far away from you are become appearing smaller. It is just a manifestation of perspective in all the three things. But many people erroneously call the first one as a distortion, and many more people call the third one that the face is a distorted. No, it is not getting distorted. That is how it is.
Yeah, I mean, that is what we have been learning. The moment we say that, the pillars, anything which is tall or going, bent, not bent, I mean, is converging, is because of distortion. You need to go to the level.
I didn't want to get into more depth into this because that's not important. Normally, all these things will go and meet at infinity, and that's called the vanishing point. If there are some architects in your group, they will be able to explain to you much better than me. So, but now we'll go to the next slide. So what is happening is there's a foreground element and there's a background element, okay, or maybe elements also, but there's a distance between the foreground and your camera. We're calling it as D1, and there's a distance between the foreground and the background. That's called the D2. Okay, just remember that. But I'm going to repeat this picture again and again so that you need not remember the D1s and D2s. Okay, but as the D1 decreases and D2 increases, the effect will become more and more pronounced. Okay, in the case of our face, the D1 is your nose, which is very close by, and your ears and all are behind. So they will look very smaller because of the D2. And this becomes more and more powerful as the D1 decreases. You can try this later on with your thumb. Just go and stand in front of your house. Keep your hand outstretched like this, keep your thumb, and look at a faraway tree or a building. The building will look much bigger than your thumb. Now you bring your thumb closer and closer to your eye. And as you bring your closer to the eye, the thumb starts becoming bigger and bigger. And if you're looking at your moon in the night, when you bring your thumb about a centimeter from your eye, you'll find that it is bigger than the moon itself. I'm sure all of you will agree that your
Yeah.
thumb is smaller than the moon. I hope there's no ambiguity in that. Okay.
Right.
So once again, it is just a perspective. Moon is huge in size, but the D2 is very, very large. And D1, one is some 200 or 350,000 kilometers and one is 1 centimeter. So that is where the effect is so pronounced because of that.
The distance.
I'm sure you must have played this game when you were small kids, but you can do once again and confirm that your thumb is indeed smaller than the moon. It is actually.
Yeah.
Right? So we've been calling all this perspective, and all. So what is distortion? Let's look at that also for one slide.
I mean, talking about the tall buildings, distortion is bending of pillars or bending of the line.
It is a bending of line. You're absolutely correct. That's the distortion.
Okay.
So if you photographed a grid-like thing, like this, okay, then you'll call that. And if you take a photograph of that grid, and if it does not reproduce exactly like the grid, then you say there's a distortion. Like the distortions are many types. I've shown you a couple of things here. One is barrel, which bloats out like that in the sides like barrel, and another one is pincushion, which budges inwards, moves inwards. Okay. So if you look at this picture, you can see that here the distortion is in present, and these pillars, which are supposed to be absolutely vertical, they are now bent. Okay. So distortion is loss of fidelity. Excuse me, please, just give me 10 seconds.
Sure.
Okay. So distortion is actually fidelity or faithfulness. Okay. Suppose you go and purchase one expensive sound system. So that salesman must have told you, sir, this has high fidelity. So what does that mean? If Lata Mangeshkar is singing, it should sound like Lata Mangeshkar, not like somebody else. That's because its fidelity or faithfulness from the original is faithfully reproduced in the output.
Okay.
Fine. That's the issue of distortion. Lenses of poor quality give distortion. It gives you distortion. Okay. But perspective is there everywhere with every lens. Whether you buy $100 kit lens or 5,000 rupee kit lens or 5.5 lakhs Zeiss, same thing. Because it's not a property of the lens at all. It's a property of the distances of the subject, or in other words, our D1, D2, which I showed you earlier in the diagram.
Okay.
But people are clever these days. So what they are doing now is, though it's not exactly relevant, I just mentioned to you, if you take any modern lens and you take a picture with it, and you open it in Lightroom or Photoshop, you will find it to be absolutely having no distortion at all. That's because there is something called lens profiles which define the lens very precisely, and that information is being handed over to the software, and that software is correcting all the distortion and making it look perfect for you. But technically speaking, to design a lens which is very, very free of distortion is an expensive proposition. It will cost you quite a lot of money to buy such lenses. So as usual, like many things are being circumvented through software, distortion is also being circumvented with software. Okay. All right. So that's it. Showing in the big picture. They're out there. And here, once again, is a brief summary of everything you've seen. So the first three are not distortion. Only the fourth one, which is pointed out with that big yellow arrow, is a distortion where the things which are supposed to be straight are not straight. Whereas if you look at this building, they're perfectly straight. It's an absolutely distortion-free image. There's no distortion in that image at all. So is the case with these rail tracks, which are the rails are perfectly parallel and perfectly straight. There's no issue at all. They seem to be converging only due to perspective, because of things far away are looking smaller than the things which are nearby. Okay. So Hardik, I would like to pause for a minute here. Okay?
Yeah.
Because we are going to take up something little different from this point onwards. I mean, it is perspective, all right, but the definition change. I mean, I want to go to another angle of it. So, if there are any questions here at this stage, I will answer them.
Yeah. So to our audience, if you have any questions with respect to any of the slides, do let us know. Type in the slide number, and we'll bring that up. And just bring up this comment from Mr. Yogesh says, superb explanation, slide 19. I guess 19 was about the perspective images. And Chandrasekhar says, wonderful examples to get the right perspective. Yeah. This is quite confusing for me. The only moment you gave an example. I mean, it's all numbers,
I will explain to you. There are two distances here. One is the distance between the foreground object and the camera, and second is the distance between the two subjects. Okay. Now the effect of that, what you see, the foreground becoming very, very big, it becomes more and more pronounced if that distance between the foreground element and the camera reduces more and more. Yeah.
I mean,
so
the thumb and the moon example actually helped.
Distance between foreground element and camera, I try to shorten it into D1. Okay. So that's a problem with my inherent nature. Being an engineer, I can't help it, but please bear with me. But wherever
the moment
I am putting that picture again and again, so you will not have much difficulty in understanding the difference. The distance between foreground and camera is D1. Just remember that, and the other distance is D2. Okay.
Yeah, the moment you gave an example with respect to the thumb and the moon, I could understand the thumb is my foreground element, and that actually helped me to understand this graph.
That's why I ignored that example. Correct. Thank you.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, that was quite easy to understand than this. I'm not that good with numbers sometimes. Okay, let me go to the comments. Mr. Narayan is asking, what would you say about the perspective correction in Photoshop?
We are going to come to that little later.
Yeah, sure. Indrajit Ghosh is asking, what about the second image? I guess, Mr. Indrajit, are you talking about the image of the railway track or the tall building? Second image is if it's a track. Just put in the comment back and we'll bring that up. Meanwhile, I'll bring up this comment from Mr. Murli. Great to hear you, Kandimalla. Would you differentiate between perspective seen by the eye and the perspective presented by the lens?
No.
Yeah, quite.
No.
Okay.
No difference. Only thing is, I request you to look at with only one eye, because camera lens has only one eye. When you use two eyes, automatically stereoscopic vision is coming into play. That changes things a little bit. Not the perspective, but the perception of depth is different because you are having two eyes.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. This is what I was trying to go towards. That what we are seeing, I'm making that as a neutral, and what camera is capturing is the perspective. What it is creating is probably because of the glass in between, or because of the single lens.
Actually, I will tell you one thing. That little tricky video I showed you, had you really put that scene in real life and you're looking at both your eyes, you will not have any difficulty in distinguishing what is what. Because you are using two eyes and you will immediately know which is in the front and which is at the back, which is not possible on a screen and a capture because they are flat. That's why that little experiment was purposely done to prove that point.
Okay. I was just out of curiosity, for example, the tall building and the tracks.
Yes.
If I want to get the perspective right, all I need to do is be parallel with the lines of the building or the tracks.
Yes.
Then I mean, the lines would be correct.
Yeah. We'll look at that in a little more detail. We are going to cover that. So if you take a drone and take a photograph of that rail track, it will look parallel to one another. Because
Correct.
all entire part of it is parallel to your drone sensor. Then it look parallel.
Correct. And in the video, they actually played with us by having that angle which looks proper, but if you go with a different angle,
it's an optical illusion type of a thing, if you ask me.
correct.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to the next question from Mr. Prashant. Why only the last pic is distorted in the last slide?
Okay.
I believe that that's with respect to the yellow mark. Yeah,
I think this
the one with the
right?
yellow arrow.
Yeah.
Why only the last pic is distorted?
Because it's the only where the shape has changed. You took a picture of a straight line and it's looking curved. That's why. Whereas in other cases, the shapes have not changed. It's only the where you are, that exactly how your eye looks if you are at the same place.
Okay. Coming back to Mr. Indrajit's question, he was referring to the distorted face. Yeah.
That's not distortion. That's what I'm trying to say. That's not distortion. Because you are so close, the nose is looking big. That's it. And the cheeks are so big that they obscure these ears completely. They're just like your thumb. Why is your thumb looking so big when it's close to you?
Can I say that the thumb is like the nose and the hair, the head portion is like the moon? I'm just trying to compare the D1 and D2.
Yes, not so far away. Okay, yes. I'll show you another example like this, but maybe then it will be even clearer. I have a picture.
It's quite difficult to digest when you say that it's not distorted, because the moment people say wide angle selfies, the next word comes out is distortion.
No, it is not the problem with the wide angle lens. I'll give you some examples. I'll show you why wide angle lenses and telephoto lenses have the same perspective. Absolutely. The same.
Cool.
Okay. Now, Hardik, if you remember correctly, don't forget the title of the presentation.
Perplexing perspective.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not that I understood this on the day I started. It took me also some time to understand, or some period of time.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. I'll just take a couple of questions and then we'll move. One question from Mr. Atsima. What is the focal length matches your eye? What is the focal length matches your eye? Probably they say 50 mm is.
No, it's not 50 mm. It is actually, I cannot tell you from the top of my mind because I've forgotten the number. You got to take the lens and cornea together. And doctors, unfortunately, measure the focal length in diopters. It's another crazy thing, which is a number 1000 divided by that number. But I will get you that number. It is quite wide, actually. The angular view of the eye is quite wide. You can see quite a lot. But the focal length is not so short. But I have that number written down somewhere. I will send it later on. I don't have it from the top of my mind. I can't. My memory is generally totally busted these days, so I can't recollect the numbers straight. Okay.
I guess we would have discussed this in some workshop, but we'll be waiting for that. We'll check that.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I'll just move to the next question quickly.
Yeah. Last question: is a distortion of the vertical column because of the lens? Yes, very much. It's a defect in the lens. Yes. Very much so. Okay.
Yeah, let's move.
Okay, now let's get into something really interesting than this. Look at this picture very carefully. Okay, this I copied it from a Nikon brochure, and this is a very interesting exercise which you can do yourself later on when you have some time. So what has this man done here? So what he has done is he has put this beautiful lady on top of a small water tank-like thing, and then he kept her size approximately the same, but kept on changing the focal length. So what did he do? So obviously, when he was using a focal length of 20 millimeters, he came very close to the subject. And when he was using a focal length which is correspondingly longer and longer and longer, he went farther and farther and farther away. But he kept the distances in such a way that the subject size is more or less the same. I'll pause for a minute.
This
kept on
example,
varying-
yeah.
He kept on changing the distance of the subject between the subject and the camera and changed the focal length so that the subject size is more or less the same. Okay. So what did he do? Look at our diagram again there. The D2 has not changed between the front and the back. It's the same. She's sitting at the same place. But D1 is continuously changing. First it was very less. And subsequently with 50 and 200 and 400, it went more and more and more.
So with
Right?
400 mm, the camera had to go back, so the D2 started increasing. And
Not D2. D2 has never been touched. D2 is the distance between the lady and the background.
sorry, D2 is the same, but the D1 is changing with respect to the lady.
Correct.
Background,
D1
we are
increased a
talking with
lot
respect to the
before,
lady.
D1 is very, very, very far away for 400 mm. And for 20 mm, D1 is very, very short. Okay.
Yeah, this
What
example
do
I
you
was
observe
able
out
to
there?
understand, when I was talking to Prabhakar Garu, and he explained this, that with using an example of lamp and the moon. How do you make the moon bigger? You take a longer focal length, go back and shoot the lamp, and
Yeah,
so
we'll
that
see
the
all
moon
those
will
things.
start
We'll
become
see
bigger.
all the wonderful things we are going to see.
Yeah, cool.
So we are halfway through our presentation. If people still remain by the time we come to 40 slide number 40, we can go all through that. If they go away in between, I can't help.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's analyze these pictures a little more in detail and see what's happening over here. We've been talking about so many things. Are all these things being obeyed here? First of all, let's start with this 20 mm figure. You see, if you compare with that 400 mm, there is an opening at the back. You see this opening at the back? A square black thing and a fountain.
Yeah. I'll just put
Whereas
the
if you
full
take
screen for a
20
moment.
millimeter, she is completely dominating over the background. Just like your thumb started dominating over the moon as you brought it closer, this foreground subject started dominating over the background as you went closer and closer to her. You can't even see that fountain behind her, which you see in 400 mm at 20 mm, because you have gone so close to her. She has become very large in size and she's completely dominating over the background. Okay, that is our D1 is very short, so it has become very big, dominating the foreground subject is dominating. One more thing you could observe is the shorter the focal length you are using, the more the background is covered.
Yeah.
Okay, as you go back and back and back and use a longer and longer focal length to keep the size of the subject the same, the background is also being tightened up quite a lot. Lesser and lesser is being covered. That's the effect of the focal length volume. Fair enough. So here we actually did some tamasha. What did we do? We changed the focal length and distance also together. And how did we change it? Not as we wish arbitrarily. We changed it in such a way that the subject is being maintained more or less the same. So to demonstrate the effect of perspective methods. Let's take another small variation of this. In fact, a simpler variation of this way. Okay, this is a small example which I already mentioned to you, that when you keep the subject size small, the same, subject size is same. If you use a wide angle lens, the area of coverage of the background increases. And with a telephoto lens going backwards, the background is tightened up. That much of background is not covered. Sometimes it is useful in street photography and all, or even in a wedding situation, or wherever you want to tighten up the background a little bit, and if you have space to move, you can go a little backward and use a longer focal length, but at that time your perspective will change. It could be useful at times, but just bear it in mind that you can control the area covered in the background by using a telephoto lens or a wide angle lens, depending on the way you want it. Okay, this is a more interesting picture. So what has happened here? Here what has happened is the photographer did not move in this case. He stood at the same place and changed the focal length. So what is happening now? What is happening now is everything in the image is increasing in size, or everything in the image is reducing in size. But the relationship between the different elements is not changing. Please be very careful with what I'm saying here. Everything is becoming big, everything is correspondingly becoming small. Okay, you see that tree and that lady and that little arch-like thing, everything correspondingly increasing in size, everything correspondingly decreasing in size as you reduce the focal. But the relative sizes are not changing.
Yeah, relative size is not changing.
So that, my dear friends, is the basic difference between changing the focal length and changing the distance. Okay, to change the relative size, only one way, your feet. Okay, you want to change the entire picture, larger or smaller, you must change the focal length, only then they will change. But if you want to change the relationship between the different elements in the picture, you must move. There is no other way to do it. So what's the practical consequence of this stuff? Okay, I was actually teaching this in a class, and one lady who came there was a wedding photographer. She got up and said, I wish I had known this.
Okay.
So she was photographing a couple. You know, in this marriage pandals, you often have an arch-like thing with flowers and all decorated.
Correct.
And she had the couple and that arch. She wanted a certain relationship between the arch and the couple. She had all the lenses with her, white lenses, pink lenses, green lenses, everything. She stood at one place and kept on changing the focal length from 24 to 200. No use. The relationship between the arch and that couple will never change if you stand at that same place. Everything would have become big, everything would have become small. But never the relation between the arch and the couple. What she should have done is she should have moved to get the right relationship. She should have changed the D1 because D2 is not in her hand. Okay? Or maybe even that was in her hand. She should have moved back and forth this D1 and got the relationship she had wanted. So, what does this tell us? Okay? It tells you something terrible which you would have believed till now, which is at the very top. Perspective does not depend on focal length. Hardik, this is what you're asking me. Perspective does not depend on focal length. All lenses give the same perspective. If you want to confuse you further, I'll give you another bombshell. Even depth of field does not change with focal length. All lenses have the same depth of field. That may be even to a... Actually, I do both these things together because of paucity of time. I did not do the second part. So here, you at least take this for today. Perspective does not depend on the relationship between the elements will not change by changing focal length. You must move, only then it will change. Otherwise, it will happen like this. Everything will become big, everything will become small.
Nothing changes. Only thing is changing is it's getting cropped. If I say,
it's like
third image is a cropped version of of the first.
You might as well put the picture in Lightroom and press the magnification key and reduce it. Yes, simple. No difference.
Correct. Right. To make a real physical change, you need to move.
Yes, if you want to change the relationship between the elements, foreground and background, you want to make the couple bigger than the arch, smaller than the arch, whatever you want to, you have to move. Right. Okay. Now I'll give you a piece of advice here. If you want to learn photography, buy one teddy bear. Very useful. Okay. Teddy bears are very good. They don't move. Okay. You can take a flash it in their eyes. They won't say anything. They'll bear all your idiocy, every stupid thing you do. They won't utter a word. So I always take a teddy bear. They won't and start doing experiments. Okay. And they don't cost much. Just buy with a medium gray tone or something like that. Useful for your exposure also. Right. Okay. That's fine. Okay. Now this teddy bear, I kept it here on a parapet wall. And I have another building in the opposite compound. And I took this picture A, at about 6 feet. Okay. Now I stood at the same place, 6 feet. And I took another picture with a wide angle. So I got picture B. Okay. Now let's look at picture A and B. What has happened compared to picture A and B? The important thing is I have not moved. So as per theory, my theory so far, perspective should not change. Has it changed? Look at the size of the grill, look at the size of the teddy bear relative to one another. Has they changed between A and B? They are not changing, they are the same. Look at C now. What I did was I used the same focal length I used in B, but I moved closer to make the teddy bear same as A, same size as image in B. Now look at see how big the teddy bear is compared to the background. Why? Same thing. Our D1 has reduced it here. And the teddy bear has become, just like your thumb is coming closer to your eye, I move closer to the teddy bear, causing the teddy bear to be dominating over the background. Because my foreground subject has become very large because of the close distance with the foreground. Whereas in picture B, both were shot at the same distance. Focal length has changed, so everything has become smaller in picture B. But the relationship between the teddy bear and the grill has not changed.
So, it's very important to understand where to stand and what focal length to use. This kind of helps to isolate the subject from the background. When we say that.
We will look at a few more practical situations where this is being used.
Yeah, I'm actually understanding what's happening with my setup right now. Earlier, I used to use the wide angle of the laptop, which is a laptop camera, and now I'm using a DSLR. So now I can understand what in terms of numbers.
Okay. Now comes the real funny part of it.
Okay.
If I take B now and take a crop of it and compare it with A, you see this arrow, that orange arrow from top to bottom? Okay.
Yeah.
I have taken image B and I cut it and made it into D. D as in delta. If I compare it with that yellow arrow, they look same. This is why another proof to you that, what is it? Perspective is independent of the
focal length.
So Karthik, you are at least, I hope you are convinced.
Yeah, actually. I'm just thinking, next time I'm shooting some portraits outside, I will actually put some brain and see how I
I
can
will
get
talk
some.
about portrait specifically. Yes. So let's look at some practical situation where we are going to use. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So whenever perspective pictures are required, I steal pictures from my friend Satyaprasad.
Okay.
Okay. So here he is. Courtesy Satyaprasad is there. Okay. Unfortunately, he can't come online. But what has he done here? He has taken a little rock in the foreground. Okay. And there's a big mountain at the background. And this little rock is about half the size or 3/4 the size of the mountain.
Right.
So what is that thing telling you? You know rocks are much smaller than your brain is telling you. Okay, this picture, oh, that rock is a small object and that's looking big compared to the mountain that is,
Mountain.
which is a snow-peaked mountain must be very, very tall. So the only thing your brain will tell you is, oh my God, that mountain is very, very far away. Though there is no depth in the picture. If you poke your finger, it won't go anywhere through the picture. So many landscape artists use a strong foreground element. Literally, it makes like a stepping stone into the picture. Likewise, this thing on the right side. Actually, I took this picture, but it was courtesy my other friend, Mr. Balram, who is not here. So here also, 3 or 4 steps are having the same height as the turret on the cassette fort. So it is far away. Definitely, the steps can't be as high as a turret. And one more thing is also forcing your eye, telling you that it is far away. What is that? The stairway case walls are also converging at the top.
Converging.
That also tells you that is far away. So converging lines were used here along with the foreground size to tell you that the background of the turret is far away. So that's how landscape artists use. Of course, there are many better landscape artists in the audience, including Satyaprasad, so they can tell better. But I'm just telling you the principle behind this. To tell you that when you use these foreground objects which are large, which appear large, they are not large, they appear large. By going very close to the foreground element, you create a perception depth. I think this perhaps it's not something unusual.
Yeah.
Maybe I try to put it in words. What else? Let's look at this picture. Here we have again 2 pictures here. Right? What are 2 pictures? This is a statue of Buddha. So one picture I took with a wide angle lens and one with a telephoto lens. And in both cases I maintained the size of the picture approximately same. Now you look at carefully these 2 things, the face looks very different, isn't it? You see the first picture, the forehead, it looks very, very large. Okay, the ears are not reflecting the 2 sides because I've got so close. The cheeks are dominating. Whereas when I took the same photograph with the telephoto going backwards, I am getting a much more pleasing perspective of the person. The face is not bloated up like that. The ears are more visible. They don't look as if they're receding somewhere, as in the left side picture. And they're looking much more pleasing. So what people tell you? People tell you use a telephoto lens. You will not have distortion. So there are 2 problems with this statement. First of all, what you see on the left side picture is not distortion, as I've been telling you from the beginning. That is just because you are close. Now, is telephoto lens focal length really removing that oddness? No. Telephoto lens will not allow you to take a picture that close. If you take one picture, the same picture on the left side with a telephoto lens standing at the same place, you will probably take a picture of his two eyes and the nose, that's all. So you are forced to move backwards. So once you move backwards, your perspective improves and you will get a much better picture. So this is a thumb rule you always remember. If you are taking a tight portrait, which is head and shoulders, don't use focal lengths like 35 and 50 because they'll force you to go very close because you want a head and shoulder. You can take a very nice portrait with a 35mm lens, no problem. Just go back 6 feet, all will be there. Maybe 4 feet or 1 meter, something like that with a 50mm lens. You'll get a nice portrait. But you try to take a tight head and shoulder shot with 35, 28, you will be forced to go very close. Then you will get a very odd looking portrait. Because whichever element is to the front, that becomes very, very big. That's also the problem. I've seen many pictures taken of senior executives. What they do is, all senior executives try to put their hands in front of their table, holding a mouse or something. And rooms are small. So the photographer, what he does is he'll take a 35 and he will take a picture to cover the entire thing. And since his hand is in the foreground, that hand will start looking very big.
Correct.
It looks very odd.
Ideally, you should have used a telephoto by going back.
Maybe there is no place.
Same crop.
There is no place.
Yeah.
Or he has to make this gentleman's hand backwards towards his body so that something doesn't jet out in the front and start looking odd.
So there's no object like hand in front which looks bigger.
Or like sometimes they put one leg on the top of other. They put one leg with a shoe to the front.
Yeah.
That leg will look gigantic compared to everything else. It starts dominating over it. So please do not think I'm telling you all this theory. There is a practical implication to this.
Correct.
A very experienced photographer may do it intuitively. Okay. But if you know the correct facts, it's always better. Because understanding is more important than facts. Understanding you will not ever forget. Facts you may forget. Somebody asked me what is the focal length of the eye. I don't remember honestly. That's a number. Okay? Fine. Let's do the other one. Same thing once again. Slightly different way to look at it. Look at this once again. What have we done here? Same thing. We stood at the same place, took one teleshot, one wide angle shot, and took the wide angle shot and cut it, zoomed it, or cropped it, whatever you want. It looks same again. Backward teddy bear shot. Okay. So here, when I was teaching this, one guy got up and asked me, said, fantastic, this is very nice. I was planning to buy an 85mm lens. No, I will not buy. Why? I will simply go backwards. I'll take my nifty 50 and crop it. Fair enough. But what are you doing here? You are doing something
losing
here.
Pixels.
Exactly. You are losing pixels. You are taking and chopping it into pieces. Maybe you are using, in fact, I will tell you one very simple example. If you take a 50mm lens and make it look like a 75mm lens by cropping, you will simply lose 50% of the pixels straight away.
Yep.
You start with a 24-megapixel camera, you will land up with something like 10 megapixels, not even 12. So sometimes maybe you can get away with that. Otherwise, nobody will buy a telephoto lens. Why people pay 10 lakhs for a 600mm lens? Waste of money. You can take a 50mm and look at a bird which is looking like an ant and crop it till it looks big. No, you will lose the quality of the image drastically as you start cropping it down and down. Okay. That's why people invest, spend lakhs buying some expensive lenses because they are needed for a certain purpose. A lot of questions. Ashok Mansoor, still wide angle has more DOF? No, it doesn't. Anyway, we'll talk about it later. Okay, so why is this all this important once again in portraiture? Okay, let me tell you something. If you look at this picture, the forehead is looking abnormally big.
Yeah.
Because we went very close. Now consider a situation: you have a photographer or a subject whose forehead is already big. Okay, so what do you do though? You just do the opposite. Instead of going close to the subject's forehead, bring the camera down so that the camera is away from the forehead. That will apparently reduce the size of the forehead. Similarly, jaw. A person may have a very broad jaw. Don't take the camera down. That will make the jaw look even bigger. Take it up the other way. Okay. So this is important in portrait photography because of something very strange happens in portrait photography. Nobody wants to look at himself the same way he really is. That's what my first sentence is. It's a mix of realism and flattery. You are a very fat guy. You don't want to look fat in a photograph. You want to look very nice. You have a double chin. That may be a sign of prosperity, but it doesn't look nice in a photograph. You got to hide those things by proper angles and proper lighting. You can make a broad face look thinner with a proper lighting. Likewise, his forehead is very large. Lower the camera down. Very big jaw. Take the camera up and light it suitably. And one guy has a very large, long nose. Quite possible, right? So what happens then? Use your foreshortening. Don't picture this guy like this. Picture him lower like this. You can't find what the length of the nose when you turn towards the nose towards the picture. Agreed? Same thing with a person with very large ears. Don't make him stand frontally in front of the camera. His eyes will stick out like this. You turn him a little bit, that much of this thing is not visible when you make him turn such that his nose is turning away from the camera. Whereas with a long nose, you do the opposite. Make him turn towards the camera so that the nose will not be visible so prominent. Okay? Hardik has vanished. I don't know where he is.
I'm just trying to fix the input from the DSLR. I had to change the battery.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Can I move on?
You can continue, sir. I'll just, it'll take some few seconds to come up.
Okay. Now, so here I put this shot, next shot, for like a fun because I find that many people in this are also in this particular image. Okay, that's it. They're all my friends. You can see me second from the right, and this is Mr. Sai Baba, who is second from the left, who is also there among the audience, and this is Satya Prasad. So, in fact, this picture was given to me by Satya Prasad to show me how we did a mistake that day. Okay, so what did we do? We were all sitting in a row and in a room, So there was no other seat. So Satya came and sat on the armrest. Now you see this. He's hardly 2 feet away from the other people. That's the length of this armrest. But look how dominating he has become compared to the others. Just because of the little distance, it has made so much of change in the perspective. Okay, because we were already very close, it has made so much difference. Okay, so this is a very common mistake we make, especially when we are photographing with cell phone in a small room. So there will be a group shot, and then there will be one small kid they will tell, okay, you come to the front and stand. So by some chance, he will come 2-3 feet to the front, and he will look much taller than his father, who's 6 feet and like tall. Okay, so avoid this. Keep everybody in one plane as far as possible, and if you are forced to keep them in 2 planes, keep them as close as possible to one another. Okay, so Satya, thanks for that. Okay, so what next? Nowadays, using expensive cars and taking pictures is also a gone thing. You get wonderful, wonderful scale models. They are not very cheap also, by the way, let me tell you. They also cost 20,000, 30,000 rupees. But they cost less than a BMW 30 lakhs. So recently, maybe 40 lakhs, 50 lakhs, whatever. So recently, a picture was, a ad was taken a few years ago, not very recently. But the entire ad was shot with a BMW model. Which was about that big. 1 foot or 1.5 feet it was. Okay. It was much, much cheaper than to hire professional drivers and get a car and do this and that. This is much cheaper to transport that car and all that to that particular location. And probably they didn't go to location, they must have done everything on tabletop. Okay. So this is once again, somebody was asking about moon and that and all. So this is how it is. So that's how that shot was done approximately. Okay. Very close, with a lot of depth of field, and we did. Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Here are some pictures I think you are mentioning. That these are all very common. In our Chennai, there's a big rock in Mahabalipuram. People go and hold that rock in their hands like this and get themselves photographed. It's a very common thing. But they call it forced perspective, which is meaningless. It's just the same thing, actually. You might have heard that word. That's why I have used that word. Otherwise, it's the same thing. Things closer to you, look bigger. That's it. Simple as that. So this guy is much closer compared to the sun, obviously. So is. Okay, now look at this. Why is this first of all happening? This is leaning verticals. Okay, same thing, our classic D1 and D2. So this person is, the cameraman is standing very, very close to the building base. So that D1 is very short, so that looks big. And the stop is D2, it's very far away. That becomes small, and when you join the lines, they look as if they're falling one behind the other. So how do we correct this? There are many ways of correcting it. Let's look at okay. Use a technical camera. Technical camera is what? Those things with bellows which goes up and down with all different things and shifts and tilts and swings and rise and fall and all that. Okay. You can use one of those cameras. Of course, you can use a tilt and shift camera lens on your SLR or a tilt and shift adapter, which gives you the same functionality. There are many adapters available which use the tilt and shift. Or you go backwards and get on top of another building which is, and take a position where you don't tilt the camera up or down, straight. So D1 and D2 get equated and you won't get the problem. Of course, that may not be always possible for you to do that. You may not find another building opposite to the same building, the same etc.
Yeah.
Or of course, you correct in post-processing. Somebody was asking me, how well does it work? It works reasonably well, but there's a problem with it. What is happening is, where on earth is he getting this information from? When he stretches it in post-processing, there is some algorithm being worked out behind, some mathematics to straighten it down. Okay, so that means there are the software not you, I mean you means that the software is trying to add pixels which are not there already. So where does it get the pixels from? It interpolates and gets it through some mathematics. Okay. Now these algorithms are becoming more and more sophisticated. So generally you get a good result, no doubt regarding that. Okay. But in case you are planning to do that, because tilt and shift lenses are very, very expensive. They go to 6 digits, costing into lakhs. Okay. And they are also very difficult to use. Let me put it that way also. You've got to be extremely careful. Put it on a tripod, use a very carefully magnifying glass or something like that in your camera, and very, very carefully align. Especially when you're photographing architecture, lines have to be perfect. Okay. So it takes a lot of time, etc. People are now trying to prefer, and algorithms are reasonably good today to get large prints.
Yeah.
Okay. But when you do that, when I did this software correction, I got a picture like that. Because it has taken the same picture and stretched the top part. And this part, it didn't know what to do. It just left it like that. Okay. Now I went and did some content-aware fill in Photoshop and filled it up here. This is not the original picture. I filled it up here. Okay. So in case somebody is asking me, I forgot the name. In case you are going to use a Lightroom or Photoshop, this sort of a correction in perspective, I suggest you compose a little loosely. Okay, so that there is some extra space around, and after your correction, you will still be all right. Here I didn't do that properly, and I had to correct it. That this may not be always possible also. If the background here is complicated, you will have a problem. It may not very easily do the content aware fill. Okay. So leave a little, compress a little loosely, so that you will get a good picture. Never overcorrect. Okay. Even we are walking on the road, you lift your head up and look at a tall building, it looks as if it is falling backwards. So that's actually quite natural thing. Whereas if you overcorrect, then the building looks as if it's falling on you, not backwards. That will make a viewer very uncomfortable, because that you will never find in nature. The building will never fall on you, it will fall backwards a little bit when you look with the naked eye. So many photographers suggest that you don't overcorrect. You correct it or even slightly undercorrect, still look natural, but don't overcorrect. Okay?
Yep.
Okay, this is another photograph which we took in weather. Okay. Now I wanted to show you why you should crop loosely. I took this picture with a 20mm lens. I was at the very edge. If I go one step backward, I'll fall in a gutter carrying dirty sewage water. So I have really no chance. Okay, I just went to whichever point I want. I could went, and then I could compose it a little loosely. And I came. There's a very powerful command in Lightroom called guided upright, and it's also there in ACR. If you are into architecture photography, I very strongly recommend that you learn this tool, how to use. It is not difficult, and it is very, very, very good tool. Works very well, and you can correct. You see here, the main difference you find here is the amount of leaning is symmetrical in both left and right sides. So this is very easy to correct. Whereas here, the amount of leaning is not same for this and this and this. So you can individually correct each vertical separately in guided upright. You can take as many as 4 verticals and correct them, so you get a much better result. So I request you to look at this tool a little more carefully. If you're into architecture, it does very well. Okay. So let's move on to the last few slides. Okay. Now let's look at some very common questions. If I show you a picture like this, and if I ask you, did I take this picture with a wide angle or did I take it with a telephoto? You will probably say the right answer is you really cannot tell what it is.
Yeah, you can achieve it
You
with
cannot tell what
both the
it
ways.
is. Maybe it is most probably, logically, you would think it's a close-up shot. Maybe it's a normal lens or a telephoto lens. But look at this picture. Left side. You'll immediately tell that's a wide-angle shot. No doubt at all. Right?
Correct.
So you will ask me, I can immediately tell it's a wide-angle shot because the perspective I can easily make out. The rock is big, very close to me, and I'm seeing a very large area backwards. So this can only be a wide angle, it cannot be a telephoto. While all these hours you are boring us to death by saying perspective is independent of focal length. So if I take a telephoto lens, will I get the same result as I got with that wide angle lens? In a teddy bear shot, teddy bear, that you can take a wide angle shot, crop it, and make it look like a television. Here, there is nothing like uncrop, unfortunately. So what I can do here is, if I stand at the same place, switch my lens from 18 to 1000 millimeter, whatever focal length I want. Let's take a practical case. 200 millimeter. I switched my lens from 18 millimeter to 200 millimeter. I stood at the same place. Can I get the same picture as I am getting on the left side? Yes, you will get. But how? You got to keep your telephoto lens on your camera on a panorama jig and take several shots from left to right and top to bottom, maybe 15-20 shots. Stitch them together into a two-dimensional panorama, and such a picture will be identical in perspective to the image on the left, which you have taken with only 18 mm.
Okay. Yep.
That is a little difficult to show you because you need some extra equipment and all. But what I'm trying to tell you is just like it is, I mean, you can call it uncropping. You are enlarging the entire scene, not just a part, of course, and you will get the exactly the same. This is where many people get up from my class and go, oh, this man has told something, but it can never be the same. Really, it is the same.
Yeah, it's logical. You take multiple shots because the telephoto, the output of the telephoto is zoomed, cropped.
It's
you take multiple
it's
shots.
A small angle. It's covering a small angle, yes. You cover it up with enough images, you will get exactly the same shot.
Correct, correct. For example, if you take a scale of 60 centimeter, on telephoto you are just taking 2 centimeter.
Yeah.
To cover the rest 58, you need multiple shots.
But it's not so simple, Ardik. You got to maintain the proper nodal point, etc.
Yeah, nodal point. Yeah.
Yes, and rotate about the nodal point.
Correct, correct. And the way we take panorama on the phones is not right because we are actually moving the sensor also.
Yeah, yeah. That's why straight lines in the foreground becomes covered when you take with the cell phone. That's a topic for another day.
Yeah.
So you will light exactly the same. Kindly believe me, but it is a fact. Just like you are taking a picture and cropping to get a same perspective, will not change. This is also true. You just have to stitch the images together and do it using the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's conclude. We're all done. So what I told you, also known as conclusions. Perspective was defines the relative size. You all know that. Moving closer to the foreground makes it larger. That is our famous D1, D2 diagram. As the D1 drops, your thumb comes closer and closer to you, it becomes a larger and larger. Okay. If you keep the foreground subject same, shorter focal length will cover a larger area. I told you with the picture. As you go to longer focal length and go backwards, the background gets tightened up. It is dependent on the subject distance. You must use your feet to change the perspective. There is no other way. It's independent of focal length. Probably all of you are not convinced by the end of my class, but please think it over and do some experiments yourself, and you will indeed find that wide-angle lenses have the same perspective as that, and they are not, that what you see is an issue of perspective, which is not a distortion. Distortion and perspective are completely independent. But 99.99% of the photographers mistake one for another, and 100% of the photographers also mistake what is meant by resolution. But that's another issue. We'll talk about it later. Changing focal lengths will change the relative size of the elements, but not the perspective. Okay. Now this is another one which irritates me, so I told. I'm putting this. I hear some funny things being taught by people. Don't use zoom lens, use prime lenses, your photography will improve. Use some other exposure mode, your photography will improve. Nothing will improve that way. You understand the basics properly. It doesn't matter how you write your epic novel, which is going to win you a Nobel Prize in literature. You can use a Mac, you can use a word processor, you can use a Windows PC, you can use MS Word, or you can write with your pencil. You'll still get a Nobel Prize if you're good enough. Same thing. Your photography will be good, not because of your tool, because of the way you use the tool. Okay?
And yeah. Perfect.
Okay, fine. There we go. So that's the conclusion. And okay, now there's a small quiz I kept here. Now I don't think I'm going to ask you this quiz and ask you to answer that. So what I am going to do is I am going to give this presentation to Hardik, and he will distribute this this presentation to whoever want it, and they can practice this. Let me put it that way. You can ask these questions yourself and see if you can answer. And the answers are all nothing what I'm not told in this, so you can look at those answers for yourself. And likewise, I told you to practice. So there's a small assignment-like thing over here. So you can do this yourself. Try it out with the different focal lengths and different distances and so on. So this is a small. This is actually what I give my students. So I'm giving it here. You can have a look at it, and then you try it out yourself and convince yourself that indeed the thing is not dependent on perspective, is not dependent on the focal length. Because if your face is looking budget with 24 millimeter lens, you go backwards, it looks perfect. There's no issue at all. It's not the 24 millimeter lens that is causing the problem. It is the distance that is causing the problem. Okay, fine.
Right.
So there you go. And we have one more little presentation, not presentation, a video clip. And I also put here my, just jumped here. Another, my email is also over there. You can communicate to me with that. I generally have a principle that whoever contacts me by email, I always answer. Maybe in a couple of days, but to always answer. So look at this also. This is a small video clip, nothing very little funny humorous clip. So these guys are cleaning a truck. Okay.
This is fun.
So that's once again your brain which is causing the problem. You know trucks are big. Okay. So you automatically think, oh, this is all fine. They're doing a regular truck. But when it comes to the truth, this is only a small little truck model which is doing. Okay. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. That's what I wanted to say today. So I hope at least some of you are remaining And so Hardik told me, if you talk too long, people will go away. Okay. So I don't know how many are remaining. So he threatened me like this. So I thought I will complete in 45 minutes, but I did not complete in 45 minutes. I think I took much longer than that. I took nearly more than an hour, in fact, more than 1.5 hours. So my apologies for that, Hardik. It went too long.
No worries, sir. I guess that I mean things are clear for me at least
So there
today.
we end. Any questions are there by anybody? I will answer them.
Yeah.
And we can close for today. See, some of the problems in our photographic community, one was this. And second thing is that if you buy a camera for 24 megapixels, they call the 24 megapixels as resolution of the camera. It is not. Yeah. You go open your camera manual and go to the end, you'll find specification of your camera. And in front of that sensor, they'll put the 24 megapixel number, but they will never call it resolution. All of you, please go back and look at it. They'll just call number of pixels, that's all. That's not resolution. Likewise, people think depth of field is also dependent on focal length. It is not dependent on focal length. All lenses are the same focal length at the same distance. The distance factor is very important when you're calculating the depth of field along with the size of your sensor. That is why your cell phones which use a very small sensor, everything will be in focus with you.
Yeah.
You are getting blurred backgrounds in the latest cell phones because they are doing it through software, not because of the optics. They are doing some funny things to get blurred backgrounds. Smaller the sensor, the larger the depth of field. That is why if you are using a very large camera like an 8x10, you need to use movements like and tilts to get very large depth of field. And f128s and f64s. Because depth of field is very, very less for very large formats. Okay, done. My bhashan is over. Tell me, whatever you want.
Yeah, I'm just looking.
Most important, I hope you enjoyed it and found it interesting rather than enjoying it. So that's why we call it perplexing perspective. But I hope that first word, that unpronounceable word, has been removed from today in your minds.
Yeah, I mean pronouncing is still difficult, but definitely not applying it. Applying the right.
Hardik, you can summarize the questions and I will answer them.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the comments and trying to bring if there are any questions. Mr. Deshbhushan says instead of tilt shaft lens, I think below may be attached to a camera.
Bellows. Yeah, I can see the question here. Yes, sir, you can. Definitely, why not? There are special bellows attachments available with tilt and shift movement, which you can even connect to your DSLR. But those problem with those things are they're about $4,000, $5,000 each. There is one company called Cambo which does it. Okay, in fact, my friend here was a very well-known architectural photographer. He uses a Cambo bellow system along with a back. Back means you can use even your DSLR as a back. And but you cannot use your normal DSLR lens because the lens coverage is very less. When you move the lens up and down, the picture you'll get a black patch in one area because your lens is not covering the area. In fact, one of the important things about tilt shift lens is the area of coverage is very large, the image circle. So even after you shift the lens, still your image is, your sensor is fully covered. Okay, so yes, you can use that also. The lenses are special, they're made for that. Plus you're also moving the lens away from the focal plane, so it will not focus to infinity. All those things are taken care in the special lenses, which you get with the bellows. You can definitely, but it's a very expensive solution.
Okay.
Cambo is one brand which makes it. CAMBO.
Yeah, Krishna says, you prove that our own brain tricks us. Thank you for making it very interesting,
So
definitely.
long as you don't think I'm tricking you, I'm quite happy. So thank you for that. Thank you for your kind words.
There are no more questions. I guess they are quite, the audience have quite got it right. Okay, so if you have any questions, more questions, you can always email to Mr. Ashok, and as you mentioned, that definitely replies to each and every email. That's very true.
So thank you
And
very much. It's a great honor to be with YPS because the YPS has such very high standards, and to get an invitation from YPS itself is a big honor. Like many of my friends say, if you get an acceptance in YPS, it's a very big deal. So to come and talk to YPS is an even a bigger deal in my opinion. So it's a great honor to me. Thank you. I think I don't know Prema is there. Thank you, Prema, and many thanks to Satish, um, whom I of course you all know I hold him in very high esteem, and all the other people who patiently waited till the end and took part in it. So thank you very much. Namaste.
yeah, sir, it's our pleasure to have you. Uh, you know, we wish we have some workshops in coming future once the situation is normal. Thank you once again for the wonderful presentation and making it very clear and not perplexing anymore.
Yeah. I hope so.
Yeah. So just before we end this
Yeah,
session, I would
yes,
just
Prema is
go.
asking some question. Yes, madam, yes. Full frames give more depth of field. That's exactly the reason why people prefer medium format cameras and such thing when they want to get more control over depth of field. But that's an entirely different topic altogether. Maybe I can, if you still not had enough of me, I can talk about it sometime else.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just keeping this in mind, I was thinking, for my next camera, I'll definitely go for full frame because I love shallow depth of field when
Yeah.
I'm shooting portraits or doing, shooting abstracts or yeah. I mean, technically, I can say why I need a full frame now, not just because to
Yeah.
have more megapixels. That's the fun, of playing around like this. And while you were explaining, what I was thinking was, I'm going to experiment when I'm shooting some portraits. When you mentioned that having an arch with flowers and all, how can you, with having this technical knowledge, you can actually make some really good images, which people might think, how is it possible? You know.
Yeah.
So that is something what I'll try to apply. I'll see. I guess that is part of the assignment probably. So I'll take that up. And force perspectives are really fun to shoot. It really, it's creative. How more you can be creative.
Yeah. Sure.
There's one Instagram follow, a person I follow, and she does very nice force perspectives. She creates all these environments with watermelons and fruits and vegetables and shawls and stuff like that. It's quite interesting. Fine. So before we end the session, thank you very much, Ashok sir, for coming to YPS and making
My
the
pleasure.
perplexing,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Thank
before we
you.
end the session, I'll just go a round of announcements and then we'll close the session.
If you don't mind, I will disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
I can, I think. Uh,
Yeah, sure. No worries.
yeah, I got to
I'll
run
connect
for.
with, yeah.
Thank you
Sure.
very much.
I'll connect with you back. Yeah. Thank you so much, sir.
Bye.
Just quick announcements. If you haven't given the review yet, do it right now. After the session ends, you need to just WhatsApp us on this number. I hope you all have started uploading your images, and as you all know, at the last moment also you can change your images. So don't wait for the last moment, change it right away or upload it right away. Next week's YPS Meet Live session is from Mr. Rajsima, who is a fantastic designer, and he'll be talking about his experience of Kulasai. And as you all know, and you would have received a broadcast message also from our official number. And so we thank all our members. And if you wish to become a member, all you need to do is go to ypsbengaluru.com and register and become a member. And I hope you have liked the video and share it with your friends. If not, click the like button and follow on our all social media handles so that you don't miss out any notifications. So until next week, stay safe, stay home, and stay creative.